Hello, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. I'm Chris, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend Clem.
Hi, everybody.
And my good friend Gerry. Hey, Gerry.
How's it going, lads?
Yeah, really well, thank you very much. So we're actually running a little bit behind schedule because, guys, we've got so much content going out. We actually now have a schedule. And MUP Monthly in classic style, we're running a little bit late. So the next episode we may have to record in about 3 weeks just to put us back on track. But yes, it's lovely to call you both. Yeah, Clem, go for it.
We call this one the February Monthly and then very early.
that seems like cheating.
Nobody will notice. Nobody will know.
Yes, good. Good to start on such a professional note. And speaking of professional, dear listener, before I forget to mention it, we now have a Patreon. And if you think all of this is worth, a couple of bucks a month, and it may not be, then please, we'd love to have it. And it will make the show better, guys. So thank you. We would greatly appreciate it. Yes, it's Mantic Universe Podcast at Patreon. And maybe even, Clem, next week, we may even start, reading out the people who are on the Patreon, because we have a few. So we can say, thank you, Clem, for your €1 a month or however much you're donating. And
that much? I thought I gave only €0.50.
Yeah, Clem is emailing Patreon support. This is outrageous. I have to give the full €1. No, 1,000 times no, it's not worth it. So let's go through, let's do the bit I always get wrong. Let's go through on the menu. So we've got an introduction, then we're going to talk about our Warpath, Firefight and Deadzone, and maybe even a little bit of Halo, tangentially. We're going to talk about our Pannilore, Kings of War. And then we've got Pannilore for this month, and it's me telling something about the undead. So strap yourselves in for that, dear listener.
Looking forward to it.
We've got listener questions, which I didn't give enough time. So we've got at least one listener question.
Which is always good.
And then topic of the month, guys. So we have a topic of the month this month. So we're going to talk about, with the old classic, we're going to talk about 2024 and 2025, dear listener. So that's exciting stuff.
And now it's time for the Mantic News.
So, guys, Mantic News.
There's a lot of it, right? I tried to write down some stuff for the show notes because, believe it or not, we do have show notes. And there's a lot of stuff going on these days. Where do we start? The most recent, I think, that I've heard was apparently there are some rule changes for Kings of War. A few things that were pushed to a PDF on the website, but not fully announced. So that was a bit surprising, but why not? And from my very small window of looking, I only have what Steve mentioned. Hi, Steve. Which is the big snakes for the Forces of the Abyss are now melee 3. And I think there were some other changes. Oh yeah, about carrying loot tokens, which I think is nice. I'm not sure what happens now and not in Clash of Kings 2 months ago, but what do you guys think?
I think you can carry up to your unit strength in tokens. Yeah. So if you're unit strength 1, you can just carry 1. To me, it sounds, as a very bad player, this sounds like a very good idea, to be honest.
You can score. You can carry them, but you will
But
only
you can't score. That's it, Clem.
strength.
Yeah, important distinction, yeah.
The important thing is people aren't going to be throwing 3 or 4 loot tokens onto a troop for push anymore. Things like that. That's what it's trying to spread the love a bit. You've got to be more evenly distributed, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that makes me raise an eyebrow is not the rule itself, is the fact that it's a PDF on the website 2 months after Clash. That's the part I'm a bit suspicious about, but I'm happy with the change. Like, the change itself sounds like a good idea. I just, in general, like the idea of a yearly update. So I hope we don't get into every too often somehow we get some rule changes. Not that it's big rule changes, but
But you have to look at these not as rule changes per se, but these are errata based off 2 months worth of Clash feedback. So these aren't new. This is, we've released Clash, people have played it and have broken it by doing cheeky, filthy things. So they've instead they're looking at it and going,
Fair
okay, well,
enough.
here's the errata for Clash, and in that respect, we've tweaked this, we've tweaked this, we've tweaked this. So things like the command dice have gone from a red, white, and a blue to 3 reds as standard. So 50% of the time, you're not going to get any command points on your command dice unless you pay to upgrade them. So they're toning down some of that, and one of the magic commands has been tweaked as well. So, one of the generic commands no longer affects magic. So,
that one was extremely good. Yeah, that makes sense.
So these
I
are
think
just,
they fixed
these are
also
just errata.
some things. Yeah, no, there was also an errata on some effects apply not till the end of the turn, but till your next turn or something like this. Things that kind of make sense, and those are legitimate erratas. No, that's a good point. Cool. Yeah, what else did we see in the news? Mantic apparently is turning 15 this year. I think they've started posting some things on the website, like on their blog. But I didn't see more news than they are redoing the Mantic point system, which is a good idea because as a Mantic fanatic at that point, I have a pile of points, and I'm happy to see that there are new things that I can get with them. But yeah, have you looked at the new minis from the Mantic points, guys?
Yeah. The Mantic points look interesting. Obviously, we've had them for 14 years. Unchanged, despite Ronnie occasionally going, we're definitely going to, any day now we're going to change them. There's going to be new things. Going, is there, Ronnie? Is there really? And finally, lo and behold, 15 years, whether you wanted them or not, they're retiring some of the older stuff and bringing in some new bits and pieces. I quite like what they're doing. Obviously, if you're after any of the old stuff and you haven't already picked it up, which I would be surprised by, you've got, I think they said the end of February before they retire the old stuff. So if you're after dwarf drillers or whatever, although I've got 4 of those from Mantic Point, so I'm fine for my dwarves, you can jump in and get shot of those. The Garrick Heavy Hand, the Kings of War dwarf from the novels, he's got a really great looking model coming. As part of the points, there's an alternative Banshee, which looks terrific, and there's a Matsudan for Firefight / Deadzone, which looks absolutely superb. Then there's also a Thule Aquamage, which I'm about.
Oh, interesting.
The wave is a bit weird.
I like the look of all of them, but I thought I'd be interested. I mean, I love the idea of either special characters from the books, and I know that Wiki Dave and Mark will love that idea. And I also like the idea of alternative sculpts, so I'm pretty happy. It's Mantic Points needed a refresh. I mean, maybe this stuff could also go in the vault, but it is nice to be able to just get
it's interesting
sculpts.
You say that, because they have said that these are going to be print on demand. So I think these are 3D prints. So rather than having a load of, they're trying to move away from PVC, but instead of having a load of metal miniatures or resin, which are obviously quite expensive these days, when you order your Mantic Point model, it will be a 3D print, which means they're not having to stock a load of stuff. They'll just have to print them, on a daily basis or whatever, depending on who's ordering what and when. So they have the potential to go to the vault. However, if they go to the vault, will people want to spend their points on them? I suppose. I mean, for me, yes, because I don't do any 3D printing. I just don't like the look of that Thul Mage's face. His tentacles just too long.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point for what you just said, right? They mentioned in the article that they got a very fancy printer. It wasn't too clear to me if they use it for, doing masters for resin casting, or was it for testing? I don't know. Or is it them?
I think it's for
testing the waters. I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
It's a 12K printer, so I think they use it for not just prototyping, but also the masters for resin casting. That's the sort of quality printer that people will use for that, because you don't get stepping on them. So I imagine that's why they've got these 12K printers sitting there. Normally they make 1 or 2 or 3 models and then use them to make master molds. Now they're going, well, they're sitting around there the rest of the time. Why are we not using them for Mantic points? That would be my guess anyway. We have it. Why not use it? And at the same time, it means they're not sitting with inventory of Mantic points. Instead, they can just print them, 5-6 hours or whatever it happens to be overnight to get the
almost print on demand.
Order.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought the weakness of the Mantic point system was just if you're not. Obviously, if you go and visit Mantic, it's absolutely fine. You can bring an envelope with all your Mantic points in and go, here you go, sir, here's my 50 Mantic points. Can I please have a model? No problem. But of course, if you're abroad like we are and you want to try and send them in, it's a bit of a nightmare. And at one point, Mantic allowed you to show you've burnt the points, which is always a bit funny. Show here's a before and after photo of me burning my points to prove I've taken them out of circulation. But I wonder if actually maybe a better idea for this is somehow doing it in the app or something, tracking it in the app or on the website or something like that. Maybe we could track our purchases there better somehow. I'm not really sure, but it just seems like a very manual thing for Mantic to have to track and to, for rewarding. It's lovely that they're trying to reward customers, but it does seem like a bit of a administration nightmare to do for the game we get. But anyway, I'm appreciative.
There is already right on their web store, when you purchase there, you accumulate a different type of points. You can redeem as some euros off of your next purchases.
Cash.
Yes, so there is already something where they reward purchases that you make on their website, which makes sense. But yeah.
So every time you buy, you're credited with points, and when you hit 5,000, you get £5 off your next order. So they have that that loyalty point system where you can get cash off. But if you're buying the physical product, as I always say, the most important part, the Mantic points on the inside of the box lid, just cut those off and off you go. And there used to be some great things. I'm just having a quick look
guys,
as we record that.
I'd be really interested to see one of these tools because I actually quite like the look of it. I like all of them, to be honest. And yes, we like this. It's good.
Yeah.
Guys,
I think the biggest thing
is, you didn't have enough excitement with advent calendars. There's 3 available and a mystery one, which I think we know is Walking Dead. Which I've got to be honest, I'd be really interested in a Walking Dead advent calendar.
Yeah, and they're pushing this, I think, from next month. So they're going to be doing a campaign. So they had to confirm Walking Dead whenever Ronnie made the announcement last year. Around just after Christmas, that they had the Worms is definite, Barroom Brawl is coming back, and Pest Control, the hex-based vermin one, was coming back as well. And then since then, they have said Walking Dead will also be in there. I like the idea of the calendars. I like the fact they're not all the same game, just reskinned as well. Deep Space Pest Control is very different from Barroom Brawl, and I imagine Worms and Walking Dead will be very different as well.
Yeah, I really like these games. I think, though, I would release them not just as advent calendars, or maybe have them as advent calendars for the inaugural release, but then later it kind of sounds like something you want to have on a small, very affordable, box that you can get, kind of like what GW does, the Blitzball and the how's it called, Bladeborn, and they have a bunch of similar games like this. Very affordable, and these are easier to distribute to a new audience potentially. And all of these games would be perfect for that, right? Like the Deep Space stuff, any Walking Dead that you would fit in an advent calendar would also fit in a kind of very affordable entry-level box. Same for a small version of Worms. So I love the idea, and I think they could be, available all year round, not just as advent calendars.
Absolutely, Clem. I think you've mentioned this a few times as these little, very low-cost board games that could sit in a bookshop, for example, and people could they're at the kind of price point where you could spontaneously pick one up I think it's a really smart idea. There was the Mantic 2025 kind of teaser video, and if you pause it at particular places, we can see we're being teased a new version of Dreadball, potentially, and Assassin's Creed, which I'm going to guess is going to be, obviously on the back of the Halo box, it says using the Deadzone rule set. I wonder if Assassin's Creed will be a similar kind of situation.
Yeah, that's a good question. Or it could be really a lot more of a board game, right? That's I've never played the Assassin's Creed games, so I don't know too much about them, like which one of the tabletop games that Mantic does would fit in that franchise, but yeah, I'm not sure.
I've only played bits and pieces, but I think broadly it's a massive kind of open world where you go off and do your adventures, and there's this bizarre kind of time travel conspiracy that you're fighting against. There's kind of this historically evil conspiracy or something like this. But I wondered if... Sorry, Jerry, go for it.
It's a bit weird. Essentially, the basis of the game works on genetic memory. So there's not time travel per se. Instead,
oh god, genetic memory. This is sounding very 2025, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah. You're being pushed back in time to your ancestors' body to relive thing to try and manipulate / find out what happened. They've got progressively more fantastical as time went on. They were very. We want this to be as historically accurate to Renaissance Venice as we can, and then they eventually just went, you know what, aliens in Atlantis, that's all fine. The fascinating thing will be there is an Assassin's Creed board game, which I have from Triton Noir, which I don't know if they've lost the license or if this is going to run simultaneously while Triton Noir have the license for Assassin's Creed as well, in which case there'll be some sort of... There's always a delineation. If they sell the rights to a board game, you've got the rights to that board game for whatever. Now, the fact that they've got Assassin's Creed Venice, does that mean that Mantic won't be able to touch that period, those games with the classic Assassin's Creed figures? Or have Triton Noir lost the license, in which case all is permissible? Or will Mantic be forced into doing something for Valhalla or one of the other Assassin's Creed games? Because it's been out now for about 4 years. So it might be that they're changing who's got the license. And the Assassin's Creed board game was very... I would almost say it was more like League of Infamy, although that's not perfectly accurate. But as far as Mantic games go, you've got people going in cooperatively trying to do a mission, and then you could play either against, you could play against an antagonist, or you could play cooperatively against an AI. So there is the potential for an existing Mantic property to be reskinned for Assassin's Creed, or they might just go for a whole new game altogether. Obviously they have Alessio, who does a lot of board games, now works for Mantic with Riverhorse, so there's the potential to just do a bespoke game for Assassin's Creed. It'll be fascinating to see what direction they'll take with it.
And I think, Jerry, there's about to be a new video game landing, which is, I believe, set in Japan, kind of feudal Japan. And the other thing I'd mention is I think it's very, very openly talked about at the moment that Ubisoft has had big financial troubles recently, and I think they're potentially looking to sell. So I don't know how that might impact any kind of deal, but they've had a long string of these massive blockbuster games that have not been
died
successful.
On their backside, I think is the phrase.
The video game industry is just killing itself since all these big money came into it. It's just become something that's very strange.
The biggest problem will be if they've licensed from Ubisoft and then they do go bankrupt and somebody picks them up, at which point all the licenses are out the window. So it could be a relatively risky one for Mantic, because they could end up sitting with a load of tooling and not being allowed to actually sell the product.
Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal, to be fair. But it would be really interesting to see what comes of it. I've got to be honest, I'm probably going to sit this one out, because we've long reached the point where you can even pretend it's possible to play every single Mantic game. So I think at this point, particularly with the kind of board game speciality games, I think I've got to be very selective with which ones I play. I definitely want to play The Walking Dead. I've already picked up Halo, but suddenly you're running into, well, if I play Halo, that means I can't play Deadzone, which I don't get to play enough, or I can't play Firefight. So yes, already we're getting into a situation where we have to be very selective with our time and hobby dollars. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure people will be interested.
Same for me in a way. I mean, unless they give us like fantasy Deadzone with it, like if they, for whatever reason, end up taking the Deadzone engine and adjust it to fantasy, or with new mechanics, kind of like what they've done for Halo, because the Halo is Deadzone, but it has some new mechanics, from what I understand. Never played it, but from what I heard, that could be pretty cool. But yeah, otherwise, I'm pretty much with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest. I'd be more interested, I think, in picking up a starter box for redone Dreadball. Even if I accept I probably won't play it very often, but I'd be up for getting that and just playing it once every couple of months.
No, Deadzone will be definitely on the same shelf as Dungeon Saga Origins. As the thing you play very not often, but whenever you do, it's a lot of fun.
Do you mean, sorry, buddy, do you mean Deadzone or Dreadball?
Dreadball. No, the Dreadball. If they come up with a starter or whatever, it would be, in my head, at least in the same category as Dungeon Saga Origins, as something that I play only on special occasions, but it's a lovely time when I do.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the other big one that we also have very little information at this time is the Kings of War Champions, right? So in a way, depending what they do with this, it will also kind of push things around in our hearts and our gaming schedules, I suppose. But we haven't heard much about it lately, have we?
No, I think next it's March. I think there's going to be further announcement. I mean, my hope for this is still, you go to a Kings of War tournament, you take your heroes and monsters out of your army box, and you play a quick little game with those few, 4 or 5 or 6 models. That's how I imagine it works. And I will also be asking Mantic, as someone that accidentally named Kings of War Champions, can I please have a free starter box of Kings of War Champions? As I sort of accidentally helped.
That sounds only fair, but only if you say good things about it, then you get...
we do our best on the podcast, Clem. I mean, we mostly say good things. There may be some not so good things coming later, dear listener, but, we are obviously, we're Mantic fans, but we just try and... I don't think the podcast would be fun, guys, for us or for the listener if we just went, shut up, everything's brilliant. I love this decision. I love the Coral Giant sculpt. I don't know what everyone's talking about. That's I don't think we'd be making the point.
Very harsh on the Coral Giant.
We'll get to it, Jerry. We'll get to it. That was just an example that just came out right away.
Out of nowhere. I think it's also, that being said, I don't like also the content that is like, oh, GW does this awful thing, and like the clickbait negativity. That's also pretty bad, I think. So yeah, it's
listen on, dear listener. Yeah, section number 6 will shock you. Yes. No, absolutely, Clem, absolutely right. Super, guys. We've also have some notes here on the Vanguard campaign. Apparently, and I know nothing about this, so I'm just reading something out. 200 plus backers, $20,000. Apparently, we also get Abyssal Dwarves. I guess this was the crowdfunding campaign, right, Clem?
Absolutely, yes. I was a bit worried at some point because the campaign was a bit stuck. And I thought, that's too bad. We won't get the Abyssal Dwarves anytime soon. Or they will come to the vaults at some point later, but I would love to secure them right away. And when I looked back at the campaign, it actually reached over 20,000, and that's where the Abyssal Dwarfs were, I think, as a stretch goal type of thing. So yeah, it's a small campaign comparatively to 400,000 for Epic Warpath or like other Mantic campaigns, but it's still cool that now the game is out there for anyone who wants to give it a try, and it's pretty easy to get into. And so that was ultimately a nice thing, and I got cool STLs out of it, so I'm happy with it. So yeah,
good stuff.
Well, the nice thing about that was it added the Twilight Kin to Vanguard, the new sculpts. So
that is true. Yes, absolutely.
But because obviously people have got a lot of Vanguard previously, and the other factions that they unlocked, so the standard, the Basileans, the Dwarves, and everything else, they were all sculpts we'd either got in the original Vanguard Kickstarter or subsequently, but then they added the Twilight Kin in there as well. So that was a nice little addition that I didn't think we would see.
Yeah, it's important to give something new, isn't it? That is good. That is a positive thing. And funnily enough, our good friend Podable Star Peter picked up, I think today, the Vanguard rulebook. And him and at least I think his local Pathfinder Craig and possibly another couple of guys are going to play a little bit of Vanguard, and I think they're very interested in the narrative aspect of it, and if they can get 3 or 4 of them, then they will play a little campaign, which actually sounds super cool. If I'm honest, that sounds really cool.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, the campaign. I played a few years back. I have fond memories of it. So yeah, that's always was a good thing to do.
Nice and super. So at time of recording, dear listener, so we're recording on Sunday the 2nd of February. Clash of Kings tickets went on sale yesterday. Clash of Kings UK for 2025. And it's fair to say they've been pretty popular, guys.
Yeah, I think they had 230, 40 tickets. I don't remember exactly.
220 something, I think. It was a slightly strange number. It was 220 something, I think. And they still basically almost sold out. Like there are only a handful left, from what I understand. In less than a day. So that's a pretty good sign, I think, for Mantic and for Kings of War. It also means, Steve, you need to dream bigger and get a bigger venue next year or something. Although I guess it feels a lot better as a TO to sell out your tickets and then be secure in your funding, rather than try to get something too big and then have it only half full and then struggle to pay for the associated expenses. So I'm not sure. That's a good question. Could they also sell out 400 tickets is the question. What do you guys think? It'd be interesting. I mean, I think Steve's absolutely right to increase it by sort of 10% on last year and see where we are. We did have some dropouts last year, so I think the number was something like 186. And I think to go from 186 to shooting for 400 is probably ambitious year on year. So I think going to 220, seeing there's still the demand. What I wouldn't want to do is try and be too ambitious and then lose the magic, because obviously Clash of Kings has always been a really good time. It was good at the university, but last year it was somehow, and I don't know how, it was substantially better than the year before. So there's just something magic about this group of people and this location and everything else. So they've got the magic sauce, and I'd be hesitant for them to sort of try and be too radical with change, just in case. But yeah, I mean, last year was by some distance the best gaming event I've ever been to. There's not even a conversation. So I'm super excited to go. We've got obviously we're going to have a team of fish going, hopefully, and then we've also got a few people from Germany going for the first time. So there's Wolfgang, who we mentioned on the pod, and there's a couple of other sort of the great and the good of Mantic people in Germany actually going to Clash of Kings. So it's really, really exciting. So yes, we will be by some distance the worst country that's travelled in. There's all these countries like Argentina and Spain and Poland, and they come and they kick some heads in, and they are really good at the game, and they come to win. And then there's us from Germany who's sort of like, oh, can I play? So
it's the
whatever
touristic
reason.
activity also.
Yes,
so,
yes. But so I'm so excited about it already. I'm starting to plan the week out, etc. So yes, I've already asked Walt if he will write a story for us for our, for the narrative of what's happening. So yes, very exciting stuff, guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a very good weekend. Sadly, I will not attend most likely this year. I really hesitated. I thought, okay, maybe I should still get a ticket. If I change my mind and actually find a way to make it work. But then I thought it feels a bit wrong to, grab a ticket if I'm almost pretty sure I will not make it and, block someone who really wants to go and, if it sells out, feels a bit weird. But I will have to miss it this year again. It's a big trip. And it's just when we looked more into it with my wife, it just didn't really work. And so, the decision is okay, we have to be reasonable with this. And we have other constraints around this. So not this year. But I'll follow what you guys do. And I'll laugh at, the streams and all of the posts about it. You can share some of the enjoyment from a distance. So that's what I'm going to do.
We've also got, locally from Frankfurt, we've also got Andrew, who's going to go over and bring his family, and they'll go and sort of investigate where his family comes from in the UK, because he was born in Melbourne. And Caleb, my friend Caleb's coming, because his sort of logic is this might be his only chance while he's in Europe to go to Clash of Kings. And so he's also going to take his family, and they're going to turn it into a little holiday. So, so fantastic. So, yes, very excited to go. And, yes, I'm hoping they have a lovely, lovely time. Already people are asking, well, what's there to do in Nottingham? And I'm like, there's a castle. There's the Robin Hood statue. That'll keep you busy for 10 minutes.
There's beer, cider.
Yes, for family activities though, Clem. Family.
Well, cider works for kids, right? Doesn't it? No, maybe not. I don't know.
It's apple juice, so it's one of your 5 a day.
Oh, good point.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Jerry. You saved us. Perfect. There we go. This is all gold. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm glad I've asked. I've come to the right place. Perfect, guys.
Is, with a top 4 finish for Trident Realms this year, are you putting the pressure on?
I mean, top 4 is inevitable, isn't it, Jerry? I mean,
you'd like to think so, wouldn't you? So if somebody else was able to do it with the fish and the crabs, I can't see why we wouldn't.
Oh, definitely, with our fantastic understanding of the game and, my regular winning 2 games out of 6 at tournaments, I think we're due for a tidal surge up the table. Who knows?
Oh, I like it.
Fantastic. But whatever happens, we will have a wonderful, wonderful time. Super, guys. So there was also, talking of tournaments, I believe there was the UK Masters. I'll be honest, I don't think listeners come to MUP for hard-hitting meta-analysis, but maybe we can just have a little go at this.
We can
Apparently
pretend.
The Halflings won. Wow.
Yeah, that's about the level of analysis, right? Because I checked the list and I'm always curious, okay, what is a nasty list for Kings of War? And you want to look at Masters to find out. And, yes, the lists were nasty, kind of. Some of them don't look very appetizing, but the one that won is a halfling list, and I just don't understand what's going on. I've heard, Danny interviewed UK Master, and apparently the other players had the same idea, they just really don't really see what's coming, and yet it still works. So that's interesting. I think what it's telling me though is the game is in a good place where, when even at a very competitive event, it's not like everyone will say, oh yeah, obviously Bretonnians will win, or oh yeah, obviously the Warriors of Chaos with the big dragon will win, because that's what wins games these days. And Kings of War is obviously not like that. So just for this information, from my lower understanding of the game, that's reassuring, and I like to see that. Also, I played with 2 or 3 folks, I think, who went to Masters, at other events. And I was smashed pretty significantly every single time. So in case anyone was wondering, I'm absolutely not at UK Masters level. Spoiler alert, I guess. But yeah. What else did I see in the list that was interesting? No squat ring spam
I'll just jump
anymore.
in, Clem. Isn't it interesting? Because it's not like a new edition just dropped. Okay, there's been some tweaks with the Clash book, but isn't it interesting that even now there's armies coming out and people go, how does that even work? Like Tom Robinson's Northern Alliance army, was it last year or the year before or something, which was all punters and flying things and snow trolls. And how would that even work in the Edit Wins tournaments? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I really like it. Also, the Dwarfs won US Masters, I believe, right? The latest. Like, you see a bunch of lists that are like, okay, yeah, I mean, it looks nice. Like, it doesn't look like a bad list, but it's not like, oh my God, I don't want to play against this. So, overall, from our limited understanding, I think it's a good thing for
even
the
just
game.
taking a bird's eye view look at the lists without even getting into it. Out of the top 15, 14 lists were different factions. So when you compare that to some other tournament games where if you want to get in the top 10, there are certain armies you can't even physically think about taking. The fact the top 10, I don't think had any replicated. Oh no, Empire of Dust was in twice in the top 10. But otherwise, you were having to get all the way down to Nick Williams' 15th or so before you started seeing another duplication. So the Masters lists were all very diverse. You're not just seeing everybody's taking Night Stalkers because they're the new hotness, or everybody's taking Twilight Kin because they're brand new and overpowered. There was a really broad spectrum, broad look at all the different factions just to get in there, and I think that shows just how much work the committee put into list balancing. The fact that you could take one of 20 odd lists and still be in with a fair shout of punching high at the Masters, where you're playing against the very best in the country, or in the case of the UK Masters, 4 countries.
Yeah, no, that part was very interesting. I think it's not only different factions, but also the archetypes of lists seemed a bit different. Not that I understand every single list or could, really analyze all of them very in detail.
You're not seeing spam net lists.
Yeah, exactly. So there wasn't so much shooting overall, except when there was shooting, it was a bunch of it like elves. I think some of them were very shooty lists, but overall, maybe I think it was more elite armies. Like the impression I had is like every single unit is there to punch faces or take a punch. So maybe there is a bit of I hate the word, but a meta, or like a type of list that you want to take there. But again, as you said, it's just so diverse comparatively to what we might be used to in tabletop that it's a very positive thing.
Super. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Do we want to talk about... Sorry, Clem, go for it.
Yeah, the last thing for the news, I think, is the Vault for February. We saw previews. I think maybe at that point it's even released. The one thing I remember from it, or from the previews at least, is there are a bunch of new Scots for GCPS, and it's exactly what we've been advocating for a while now. It's new bits that go on to the plastic sprues and make you just want to get more of those. So we got new heads, we got some flamer hands, like a big flamer gun option. What else? I haven't printed any of those yet, obviously, because they're very new, but I really, really enjoy seeing new stuff on the Vault and new stuff that, complements the plastic sprues and make me just want to buy more and build more. So I hope they do the same for Force of the Abyss soon. I want to see Abyssal Guards as a bit extension onto the lower Abyssal Guard.
I think the stuff that's on there is great, but it's just out of context for their releases. That's exactly what we want to see, right? They've just released Abyss stuff. Why isn't there, exactly as you say, stuff to 3D print to supplement. I mean, it's great there's stuff for Halflings and GCPS, but we haven't had a release for that. So it just feels, to me, it just feels out of, it's like somebody has shuffled the deck wrong. You know, it's the wrong card coming out at the, it's a good stuff, but it's just, I don't understand why they're doing it now and not next month. There's no context to it, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's kind of a work in progress overall. And at least to me, it's going in the right direction if they are doing new stuff like this. And then the next one, I mean, over time, hopefully whenever they release the Basilians, for example, I hope there will be a simultaneous release on the Vault. That would be absolutely awesome. And I guess it's hard to get it right. Like you need to get stuff sculpted in time. And have all the agendas aligned in the right way.
Yeah, but
maybe there's a production delay somewhere.
Let's say, for example, Forces of the Abyss. You do all your sculpting for your hard plastics, and you do a little bit extra for alternative sculpts, stuff you're going to put in the vault. You know, you do an extra 20% of stuff. You're never going to make hard plastics out of it, but you just get it all ready at the same time. So there you go.
Oh, absolutely, that's what should happen. It's just if you haven't planned for it before, then with what the production pipeline probably looks like, and we should invite some people to tell us more about this from Mantic. Hopefully they could shed some light on this, on the whole process and how long it takes to get stuff ready and so on. But I guess if you haven't planned for it initially, then it's very hard to catch up with this and figure it out. And so the fact that we now already start seeing new stuff on the Vault and not just, oh, we have those cards laying around, so free money if we put them on the Vault and cash in your monthly subscription. To me, it sends a very positive signal that they will more and more use the Vault the way I would like them to use the Vault, if that makes sense.
I hope so, buddy. Yeah, I mean, we are nearly 2 years in, so, to say we haven't had time, I'm not so sure. Jerry?
Last month, over half of the Vault was Abyssal. So it's not like they've ignored Abyssal. Abyssal got plastic released last year, and then last month they got all the heroes.
Yeah, but it's old. It's old stuff. Oh, I will just give you another example. I'm doing
stuff as well. The Halfling isn't new. It's just the stuff that's been unlocked for the My Mini Factory campaign. So people who backed the campaign and are also Vault subscribers wouldn't have had the Halflings. They brought the Halflings in. So, there's nothing else they have for there's probably not much that they have for the Abyssals that they want to put on there at the moment.
No, absolutely. I understand that. I'm just saying I'm doing a Force of the Abyss army now, and I would do, some units of Abyssal Guards because I find that pretty cool. And they are on the Vault, but it's like 2 pauses. Like there are 2 models for them. I don't want to do a full regiment with 2 different models. That's just not working. They could have... And I understand that takes doing some new sculpts and new things, but those could be, upgrade bits that you put on a lower Abyssal, and your lower Abyssal becomes an Abyssal Guard. And that's it. And then you can, print them or buy the bits somewhere, like cast resin, and suddenly you can make full regiments of them if you want to, and they look great. So I understand it. They don't have it, otherwise they would have released it, hopefully. But there's still time. They can make them for later, and I hope for the Basilian release in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whenever it comes. They can do more of those synergies because I think it's really a big strength that they have, and I want them to use it. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely, guys. Super. We will be back after these short messages.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
We better talk about our Warpath, Firefight and Deadzone, and also Halo if it comes up. Guys, have we played any Firefight or Deadzone or Halo?
Well, I have, and I even did so with you, but I think we have a separate episode talking about this, Chris. I think it might haven't been released yet at the time of publishing for this episode.
No, it's scheduled for next week, Clem, at time of recording.
Right. Yes. So you will hear more about all of those games, but
it's going to drop either a day before or a day after this episode, dear listener.
Right, so about the same time. Yeah, I mean, I got some more Night Stalkers and printed some of them, played some test games with them. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm also now considering, testing my Marauders. Like I've built some more of them because I want to have a 750 list that is up and running. But yeah, no, it's I'm still very much excited for it. But I did not play I played a lot more Kings of War, to be honest. But yeah, what about you?
Do you want to go, Jerry?
Well, I'll be brief and to the point. No, I've not been playing any of the sci-fi recently. I have been putting together some terrain for some Deadzone games / possibly Firefight as well, which comes from a company in England called Laserforge. And they've done a whole range of cyberpunk buildings. They are laser cut acrylic, which are see-through and have got a pearlescent holographic film over them. So when you put them together, they're perfectly clear, but depending the angle you look at them, you're seeing purple or blue or yellow or teal or, a whole host of colours sort of shining through. And I'm looking at that going, you know what, they look fantastic. I need to get those just so I can run around the table. And it means no more will somebody be able to put a miniature behind a building and I'll forget about it because I'll be able to see through and see it creeping up on me. So I've just been building terrain.
Brilliant. This is great. Yeah, I find painting terrain, if I don't have a scheme, I find it quite stressful. It's the same actually if I'm painting an army. If I know exactly what my colours are and I'm happy with it, it's really fun painting terrain. Big brushes, lots of dry brushing. But if I'm not confident in my scheme, for example, if you pick up the Deadzone terrain from Mantic and you go, oh, I'm not sure, is this going to look nice or not? It's a little bit stressful. But once you've got everything locked in and you're confident, it's good times.
Yeah, I had exactly this issue. It took me forever to get on with my Deadzone buildings, but once you find something that actually works for you, yeah, it is a special type of relaxing because you don't have as many tiny details, or it's a lot more abstract in a way. So I'm with you on this one. And that reminds me, I haven't finished painting my Deadzone, so I need to get back to it.
Well, Clem, when you finish painting that, the world is going to end. So I'm quite glad you haven't got around to it yet, because,
Yeah. I need to always have a margin to keep the world safe. I'll be very cautious about it.
One thing I've noticed, actually, is a bit of a strange thing, is I actually don't like grey terrain. So I had a load of, I've got a castle set that's just grey. And obviously grey makes the table very dull. So I'm actually going to repaint my castle basically exactly the same colours as Minas Tirith. It's that kind of light, but with a bit of almost like a little bit of sunlight hitting it, just sneak a little bit of yellow or a little bit of orange in there as well. And I think it looks a lot nicer. So I don't know, it just lightens up the table. I think otherwise, if everything's grey, it just looks too dark. And I know you don't want the terrain to sort of catch your eye, attract your eye more than the models, because it is the scenery we're playing on. But yeah, I don't know. I've just noticed that about myself, is I just don't like grey, depressing terrain.
I was going to say, a while ago, I took a similar point of view, but I decided to lean into the, I suppose, slightly more realistic look. So you start with grey, and then I take a load of pigment powder, which you can either buy pigment powder or just get some pastel chalks. And one is chromium oxide, which is the most vivid green you will ever come across in your life. And then a reddish orange. And I spray it all grey and then just throw pigment powder at it randomly. And then throw a wash over the top, and the wash will take some of it off and leave other bits there. And then once it dries, you can dry brush it if you want it to be a lighter colour. And it gives there's hints of green, hints of brown across your terrain without having to actually do any real interesting, clever or time-consuming work to it. So you just go, okay, here's how this works now. And it's very quick to do and adds just some interesting colour to the grey stonework. And if you want to do extra, you can do extra. And if you don't, you can go, well, I can put on a pair of rubbly gloves and paint a whole batch of terrain in an afternoon. It takes 3 times as long for it to dry as it does to actually do it. But it looks good at the end.
That's a really great idea, Jerry, because if you look at photos of stone or go and look at a stone, it'll have like little bits of green or, other colours you wouldn't necessarily expect. Because if I go, okay, Chris, paint this stone castle, I'll just dry brush it. I'll paint it black and then dry brush it grey. But actually, that's not really what real stone looks like, right?
I mean, yeah, having some diversity in colors is always what makes it more realistic. But I think realistic is one thing. For me, interesting is more important. But that's kind of my style of painting as well. Like I like saturated colors and bright colors and so on. So yes, if you just spray it black and then dry brush gray or with another quick spray of gray from top, it's a bit dull. But I don't know. I like the idea of the white castle, like the Minas Tirith, like you're trying to do. Although it's maybe not the most realistic thing. I mean, some castles are also white like this, but maybe not like the medieval fortress type of castle. But
yeah. I mean, I find, I'm not really playing. I mean, if I'm playing with this, I'm playing Kings of War, which I think of as being, you can have low fantasy if you wanted to. You could do what you want with Kings of War, right? So you could easily have a bright, shining elven fortress, or you could have a sort of low, you could have a sort of Game of Thrones, lo-fi, dirty, relatively grounded. So you do what you like, right? So yeah, and I
it's a big universe.
Yeah, exactly. And I also find if you've kind of painted up in that kind of Minas Tirith style, I think it looks a lot better if you want to play with sci-fi as well, because I could imagine it being a nice. I've got a kind of ruined city set which I actually did last night in the kind of Minas Tirith colours, and that. To me, if you just paint that grey as I had it, to me it just looks like a medieval, destroyed town or whatever. Whereas if I paint it in the Minas Tirith style, I think it fits much better for kind of sci-fi stuff. It could have been a nice brick city that got destroyed, and I think it looks cool. Whereas for whatever reason in my brain, the grey was like, no, that doesn't work. But anyway, guys, super. So yes, I've actually happily, I've done a fair bit of Firefight this month, Clem. Obviously, you and I played several games and had a lovely old time in Berlin. Since I've been back, I've been thinking about what I want to do next because I have so many possibilities. I've got Night Stalkers. I've got a massive Plague Army still. Basically, there's boxes. I think the only models I've painted is just a Strike Force for Deadzone. I've also got my Marauders I want to repaint because I was never that happy with how they looked. I've also got Enforcers, which is in exactly the same situation. So I have actually kind of repainted or kind of made nicer, I should say, kind of leveled up about 6 Enforcer models. I don't think those Enforcers, a lot of them, they're never going to be my favourite models, but I'm a lot happier with them now than I was, that's for sure. And I did have a pretty good time painting them as well, so that's interesting. And you don't have to paint that many Enforcer models to get 750 points. So, yeah, I might do the 750 points of them and then go on to do either Plague or Night Stalkers or whatever. I was really impressed, just quickly, I was really impressed how Night Stalkers feel, although it's primarily a melee army, it felt very different to Plague on the table. The way they play, yes, you're eating people, but it did feel appreciably different, which I really, really liked, and I thought that was very important.
You just made me realize that's absolutely true. The Night Stalkers are definitely a melee first army, just like the Plague, but they play very differently. So hooray for the rule committee who managed to create interesting profiles for both armies that from a distance you would say, oh, this is the same archetype. But actually, no, they definitely play differently. So yeah, great, well done. And I'm also very excited about it and looking forward to expanding my Night Stalkers, throwing some paint on them, and playing more Firefight.
Yeah. And Gerry, we played just very, very briefly because we got an episode on it. We played at Clem's big gaming event thing. So I played a couple of games of Firefight with, really nice people. And then we ended up playing a 2v2 where we kind of finished off our little campaign. And we decided, so we had to, at one point we had to go, okay, how are the Asterians and the Night Stalkers allied, right? What's the logic we can come up with? And we came up with this idea that the Asterians worked, so they absolutely destroyed Clem's Night Stalkers in a battle. And we decided that they basically studied the rift, the kind of the portal that was bringing them through, and they had some scientists with them, and they learned, at least for these ones, they learned how they could, at a very basic level, control the Night Stalkers. Mm-hmm. So in our kind of personal lore, this is not canon. I think this is where we're going to go. And the campaign ended with the Asterians successfully guarding the secret. They got this, it's like they've got the atom bomb, they've got this super weapon, and they, spoiler alert, managed to kill me and the enforcers and take the secret. So we were trying to at least warn our supervisors that this was happening, and we weren't able to do so. So it was really cool stuff, to be honest.
You could say it's the atomic weapon, or maybe the Syrians just don't think that way, and they will just save the galaxy by keeping the Night Stalkers incursion under control, and the humans have done something stupid once more, and once more the Asterians come and save the day. That's an alternative version of it, if
Daddy's just saved the children. The children weren't even aware that there was danger. Yeah, potentially, yes.
The mad dog that came and started biting everyone around, and then Daddy had to come in and put a collar back on the crazy dog and hold the leash, and then the kids can go around and play again till the next fuck up by Mason Lambs,
But I suspect, I think at this point, the Asterians, you could read it either way, but I think they're getting pretty fed up with the GCPS and their nonsense. But who knows, Clem?
I mean, there are tons more stories coming up for Firefight, so we will see. I guess we'll talk about it in the topic of the month, what we look forward to for 25, right? So let's save some biscuits for later.
We will be back after these short messages.
This is Fred reminding you to visit the Kings of War forum, kowforum.com. No ads, no commercials. That's kowforum.com.
Let's talk about our Pannilore Kings of War. Has anyone played any Kings of War or done any Kings of War this month?
I've done a bunch of it, but did you do any, Chris? Do you want to tell us about it, maybe?
I can say I've painted a few Naiads. I've painted a few Heart Piercers, like 4, I'm going to say, repainted, I should say. And I've painted, I'm going to say, 2 Naiad, of Sorry, guys, I'm tired. Yes, thank you, Gerry. Thank you, buddy. Yes, and that's pretty much everything I've done for Kings of War. Because I came to Berlin, obviously, I spent all of my, my hobby goodwill on that, and I had to do family stuff, being a dad, husband, and all that. So I didn't have as much time, so I haven't played at Quest Hub or anything for the last few weeks. But hopefully next week I can get back.
I mean, you also have an event coming up in February, right? In 3 weeks now? To ambush event?
Oh, yeah, should potentially talk about that. So, as of time of recording, so one of the local guys has had to drop out. So, we now have a spare seat. So, I think officially we've booked 17 seats of the 18. But we could accommodate a couple more people if people want to turn up. But yes, check the show notes, dear listener. And if you'd like to come to a day ambush event or an afternoon/evening ambush event in Frankfurt, we'd be more than welcome to have you. It is a new player friendly event. So there's going to be 3 organised games, and we would encourage, balanced, friendly lists. as long as you're not min-maxing things, it's absolutely fine. So, don't give me a list of all Brocker cavalry or something like that. Don't give me a list of all phantoms, and you're totally fine.
Here goes my plans.
But what we have said is, if you want to bring competitive stuff, just bring 2 lists. Bring a nice list and a naughty list. And even in the 3 games, if you and your opponent want to both play your naughty lists, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But just be aware that it's a celebration of our local new players getting their first 750 points done. Some of the people have never played a tabletop game before, and we want to make sure that they have a really wonderful time. So after the 3 games, we're going to just we've got the place booked, we've got Quest Hub booked. So you can play whatever the heck you want. You can play 2,300 points. As long as you find an opponent, you can play doubles, ambush, whatever you want to do. That's totally fine. You can bring out your really nasty list then, if you like, and challenge people. But communication is the key, obviously. And we're going to have all the usual kind of best painted, etc. But we're also doing best painted new army, and so it's we want to make sure that the new players are having a really lovely time and feel involved, and yes, very much looking forward to it, Clem. And I believe you're coming down for it.
Yes, that's still planned. We have to figure out the details and I say we because we will be 2 players coming, as you know. So. My wife Sarah is bringing her Northern Alliance, and she's been playing actually during the Christmas break. We both worked on our armies, and we played some games together. So yeah, she's very much into it, and we'll both be joining for the 22nd. And speaking of which, thanks Chris for the suggestion for the dice, because I got cool dice for Christmas. And from what I understand, you had something to do with it. And I also got...
Hang on a second, Clem. Cool dice. I don't know what you're talking about. I told Sarah to buy you an elves army. I don't know. There's been a miscommunication, Clem.
Right. Well, she probably knows better than to...
I'm shocked and appalled.
Some elves. Right. No, she's...
I said you love elves. High elves, good elves, magic elves, shooty elves, all the elves.
That's my thing, right? Like elves. Good guys and elves. Absolutely. You should get me a t-shirt like I love elves or something.
Seriously, this could be a thing. If you were coming to Clash, this could legitimately be our team t-shirts.
I mean, the I love elves. I think that's a special theme, like the poison gift that you give to your friends of like a stupid t-shirt. Of something they don't like, and then you have them wear it. That's a good idea. That's something we could try.
When we get back around to doing merch, Clem, this could be a MUP thing, I love elves.
That sounds like a good motto, because for you it's the same, right? Like it's totally on character for you to love elves. That's absolutely your army, right?
Gerry as well, right? I think we all strongly agree on the elf issue.
There's nothing I like better than some racist elves. And all elves are racists. They're just the best / worst. Viewing humanity like puppies that they adopt for a little while and then go, oh, they're dead now. What a shame.
Oh, well, I'm bored of that now anyway. So
move on.
I've lost interest. I'm fickle.
Just the worst.
Sorry, Clem, carry on.
Yeah, no, and just so I played some 10 mil Kings of War, just mentioning it to keep you happy and your heart rate going, Chris. Funny enough, I played my Undead against a brand new Orc army, and I got crushed like mercilessly. To be fair, I sent both of my Soul River infantry, like my hammers, into a horde, thinking, yeah, I'm gonna pop this and just turn around and destroy his line. And I did 30 wounds or something really stupid. And I double won it. And then the double one just screwed me over pretty badly. But it's a very fun game. I struggled after that, trying to recover from it. And it was very, very fun. And from a narrative perspective, it's also cool. It's like the the elite vampire try to go crush the orcs, and the orcs, against all odds, just hold the line on a critical moment, and then that's what gives them the victory. So that was quite fun. And I played also recently again with my 10mm salamanders. I hadn't played salamanders for a year almost, I think. And we did a rematch of the finally of the 10mm Kings of War tournament from a year ago. And it was a nice challenge to take a list that I used to know quite well, haven't played in more than a year, and try it again. So that was a fun game. But the main thing I'm doing now for Kings is stressing about my list for the year, and trying to find something to do for our tournaments in Cologne in early March, so 2,000 points. I was hoping to have my Force of the Abyss ready by then, but I just don't know what to do for my list. So, I'm back to the working table for it. Probably considering also taking Undead instead, because I have a half-finished Undead army. And if all else fails, I'll just take the Goblins. And so just, removes some of the pressure of, I really need to get an army done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, which was stressing me up a bit. So lots of things going on in parallel in Kings of War, and I'm not so sure where I'm going with this, but I'm having a good time, so I guess that works.
Yeah, I will, Clem, you'll be shocked to hear I will be taking 2,000 points of Trident Realm. I have already played the list. It's exactly what I took to them last time. I'm just going to stick with the same thing. It's pretty much my 2,300 points list with minus a Worm Rider hero guy plus Gigas is a regiment rather than a horde. But it's pretty much, it's the same play style, etc. Very similar. So who knows? I'm not saying I'm trying to get good because that's madness. But it's I don't want to go to Clash of Kings be like I did with my Empire of Dust, where I barely know the rules with a very technical army. So I want to go giving myself a chance to be somewhere in the middle, let's say at the very least. So that's be happy in the middle.
I mean, like you said, it's an interesting thing. It feels better, I think, if you know your army, and then you can really enjoy the games in a way.
Exactly, Clem. Exactly. That's exactly it. Yes.
Yes, you don't have to figure out, okay, what am I doing? Oh my God, this army on the other side of the table looks so strong. How do I even deploy? Oh my God, he placed a dragon here.
It's not even about wanting to win more games. It's just about, okay, this is how I deploy. This is roughly how many wounds I should expect to do when I charge my Worm Riders in. It's just I know where I am with my army. It's not stressful. It's just I can just relax into it, and it's 6 games on a weekend. It's intense anyway. So just having this level of sort of security, as it were, it just makes me feel a lot more relaxed about the whole thing, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. I think that's a good thing to have when you go to a big event, or especially 6 games over the weekend is exhausting. And so if you have half of that figured out already, because you know your list, you know the stats of your units and what you can do with them, then you can really go through it with a lot more pleasure, I think, and a lot more enjoyable experience.
Exactly, Clem. Because actually, forgetting special rules and things, it can, even if you're not taking it super seriously, it is kind of stressful to go, flip, I just remembered this really important rule or this aura or something. And so just having an idea what my army does is just, it makes a huge difference. And then the other thing I like to do is, as you know, Clem, I'll have, if I've got loads of units which have 18 attacks, well, I'll have 18 blue dice, so that I don't have to count the dice out every time. I just pick up, at the beginning of the game, I count them out, show my opponent, look, I've got 18 of these, and then, you're on the clock as well, so it's just, right, all I have to do is pick up all the blue dice, and I'm good. And I don't have to keep counting dice, and it's amazing over the course of 6 games where you're having to think so much and trying to think about angles at the very least. I often fail miserably, but little things like that just take the basic maths off your brain and make a huge difference.
It definitely does. Yeah, I remember when I started, someone gave me the advice to, prepare your sets of dice like this. It really, really helps you, especially when you're playing against completely new players, people you've never met. Potentially, you're in a big hall with a lot of games going on, so you're on the clock. There's a bit more pressure, even if you're not there to win, and that's absolutely not your intention or like the mindset you bring. It is a bit more of a stressful environment, definitely, and so those small things to help you go through the day with a nice experience really, really bring something. So yeah, good for you.
I'd like to say, Clem, as well, really impressed with Sarah's models, what she's working on, and the kind of the frozen lake scheme she's got going on, and also you've got going on with your Abyss. Looks awesome.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous army. And we've been doing some work on it again this weekend because she definitely wants to have it ready for the 22nd. And it's a nice army, and for a first army, it's definitely above what I was expecting. But
massively, massively.
Yeah.
Although when Sarah does stuff, she does it properly, doesn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she also already paints other stuff. So painting on miniatures is kind of a different skill a little bit. But if you've already, have some experience with a paintbrush and paint in itself, like there are some, concepts or like the way you approach painting something that is probably the same, I guess. Like I'm sure someone who went to art school and never painted a model, the first model that they paint will be much better than the first model that I painted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, buddy. But also, I think painting a model is kind of painting, but in easy mode, because, we have the luck of having, a professional sculptor make a model, and we just have to try and make that look nice. Whereas if you've got a blank canvas, you have to do all the work yourself, right? So...
No, I agree with you. Like with also like speed paints or dry brushing, like there are a bunch of techniques that actually help you. I'm sure there are also tricks when you paint on a canvas, but we definitely also you and I are not painting display models, right? So we can cut some corners here and there, and then the model is good enough, and we're happy to play with it because it's painted. But if you look a bit closer. Probably you wouldn't do that if you do an art piece on a piece of paper. So that also plays in our favor in a way, I think. But yeah, no, we're having a lot of fun. It was a bit interesting to play Kings of War every day for 3 or 4 days in a row during the Christmas break, because obviously I played with Sarah, and like every day we're like, oh, let's play some games, and it's like. I'm not used to this. Like it's exhausting, also in a way. It's very, very nice, but a new thing for sure.
Super. What about you, Gerry?
I ran out some Trident Realms against somebody using a UK Masters Undead army because they felt this was a good way for me to try out.
So this is your friend / fellow colleague, I would say, who you've charmed into getting an undead army, is that right?
Well, no, I have charmed John into getting an undead army, but I was playing somebody else, and they went, I'll take an undead army, and I'll use, I think it was actually John Quayle's Empire of Dust version for the Masters list, which was just full of mummy filth. So I ran out my prospective Trident Realm list and discovered I can't do any more than 2 damage in any round of melee, regardless of bonuses or anything else. There was an awful lot of 30 attacks, 9 hit, 2 wounds. 20 attacks, 2 wounds. It's just constant.
Trident Realms, we do consistently disappoint when it comes to doing damage. That is a feature, not a bug. I mean, 2 wounds is obviously very unlucky, but we're not really great at just raw damage.
4 or 5 turns in a row I was doing it. And even when you're going things like crushing strength 2, so I just need 2s, 2 wounds. You go, but how's that even possible? How? Oh. So turn 6, we were playing Take and Hold. Divide the board into 6 sections. And at the end of it, I still had a fair chunk of my army left at the end of turn 6. We didn't bother playing a turn 7 because it was just, I've just not been able to do enough to you. And it doesn't matter. Next turn, you'll either take me off completely or we'll still be here in a stalemate. And I think it was a case of I had 2 victory points and he had 8. Was it? No. 2. Aye, 2 for the centre, 1 for his back, 1 for each of the flanks. Yeah, I'd 1 victory point and he had the alternative 7 or whatever it happens to work out as. Yeah, I got kicked. What I will say is slapping mummies for days, and it just wasn't working for me.
No, either you take them off, or you'll be slapping them for days, right? Because they'll regen back and defense 5. It's a rough ride. And just very briefly, Gerry, was this 2,300 points?
It was 2,003, yeah.
And what were you using as your sort of hammer units?
For me, I had a couple of hordes of gigas, because I love gigas, because they've got Crush 2, so they're fairly dependable, melee 3 and Crush 2.
And Frenzy as well, so they're re-rolling 1s to wound. Yeah. Is it Frenzy?
No, Vicious, so they
Vicious,
re-roll
that's
the ones too. Yeah. So even though they've got low attacks, they're fairly decent as both a hammer and an anvil. And then alongside those, I had 2 hordes of Naiad Worm Riders, one with the Brew of Strength, one with the Helm of the Drunken Ram. So both hit on 3s, both have 20 attacks. One has Crush 2 and the other has Crush 1 and Thunderous 1. So, they should have done more damage.
Yeah, they're as reliable a hammer as we have, basically. Yeah.
Oh, not for me, they're not. Oh, no. The best I could manage was hitting somebody in the back near turn 4 or 5. I was just like, I might take this unit off. And I did, yay!
Yay, trembling attacks.
Everybody else was just like punching fog. It was just so many swings and no connections.
But I suspect, is this UB dice?
That was UB dice.
Because people say weird things about UB dice.
Yeah, but I remember years ago Nick broke down the numbers for UB dice, and it worked out to be pretty much average. However, I can't blame them because my opponent, and in real life, my dice roll are equally crap. So, but my opponent wasn't suffering as much as I was.
To be fair, if you're rolling the dice that badly, no army in the game is going to save you, right?
Yeah. I was fairly resilient. I was running 3 regiments of placoderms backed up by the king, so they were all elite for the guard, and 2 of them were guard of the Trident Realm, so they're unit strength 4 rather than unit strength 3.
I love that rule. Yes, I'm going to be doing that in my army for Clash for sure. Yeah,
and I stopped him, but I couldn't break him because my dice were so fudge. So yeah, I'll take them out again and see if it works better with less terrible dice rolling another time.
Yeah,
but yeah, very much hit and miss.
Yeah,
I could weather the storm, but I couldn't break him, and he just got into a better position due to surging. So he had the benefit of victory points. But c'est la vie.
Yeah, there you go. It doesn't sound like there's anything inherently wrong. The units you're talking about. That if you just roll terribly, then that's you're going to lose to anyone, aren't you? To be honest, but so I run a regiment of the placoderms in my 750 points ambush list, and they can take, as long as they're no good against things like ogres, anything with Crush 2. They make me very nervous. But against a lot of things, that defense 6 is really powerful. But I've stopped doing it now. But I used to take the Blessing of the Gods on them. But even with that, because they've got quite a lot of attacks, I think 15, something like that. But even with that, they don't do much in terms of wounds. But they can take a heck of a punishment, you know.
They're incredibly swingy because they are melee 4+ with 15 attacks.
Right.
The fact that the king is behind them in a chariot going, "Go on, lads, poke them with sticks," giving them elite helps a bit. I think what I need to do is, I mean, it was a first run out of a test list, having some form of Bane chant in there. Because I initially thought I'll just use those as anvils. I won't really worry about damage output for them. And then my actual hammers couldn't roll for toffee. So
right.
I was at that point, I'm going, I need you to actually hurt these people. And they just couldn't. They couldn't hurt them enough to take them off in one turn, and then the regens kicked in. And it was like, bottom. So yeah, there'll be some loot playing frogs coming along behind them fairly soon. I suspect there's some squid-faced half.
I would. Do you know what, Jerry?
To throw some banes in.
Before you do anything, I would actually just play again with exactly the same list and see it, because actually I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, and I think it could just literally be your dice were insanely unlucky and there's nothing that could have happened. And try it again. Try it for a couple more games.
But I did get John from OTT to pick up a undead army at Christmas. I don't know if this is just through sheer bloody mindedness or he just decided to do it to stop listening to me. But he bought a mega army. Do you remember the old elite undead army, which I think
with revenants and things in it? I think
revenants and werewolves and Rev Cav, and a extra skeleton horde box. So he put together a 2,000 point list there at the start of January. He's built everything already and primed it all. So he's just working out what colours he wants to paint it.
Fantastic.
So very shortly I'll be actually pushing miniatures into his face on the table. I said I'd be easy on him and go with ogres to begin with, because I want him to suffer.
Fantastic. But that's really exciting. Amazing.
Yeah.
And with you guys and OTT, it must be, I mean, you're having new games thrown at you all the time, right? So getting someone into a new game system is really cool.
Oh, I think so. The fact that this was something he's hummed and hawed about for years now, that he wanted to do something a bit fantasy and mass battle, not just a skirmish game. And eventually just went, you know what, I'm going to do Kings of War. And it's interesting because I've seen somebody on the Kings of War forum asking about the Old World again recently, how people have seen how it's going in their local venues. And since Old World has been re-released, I have not seen one person play it at the club up in Coleraine. Either a new person or older players going, I want to play this again. Whereas in the period since it's relaunched, we've managed to drag 2 more Kings of War players in, away from Age of Sigmar /40k. So, yeah, I think the game is worth a punt on it.
The world didn't end with the return of the old world, that's for sure.
Oh, 100%. I look at it and I go, you know, there's 2 types of old world players. Ones who've heard an awful lot about it and want to give it a go, and then people who've sort of clung to it, and that's sort of it. I think anybody who's looked at the old world and went, I used to play it, do I want to go back to it? And go, no, time has moved on. Even for me, at one stage I used to run dual armies, so I had Kings of War armies, 4 dwarves and 4 undead, and I also had old world armies for Kings of War and undead, but they were 2 separate armies, so I doubled the figures for these forces because I wanted to keep them separate. And then when they killed the old world off, it was just like, you know what, as games go, anything 4th edition, 3rd, 4th edition, grand, 5th edition, tenuous, 6th, 7th, 8th, no, I wouldn't want to play those again anyway. And the idea of trying to teach somebody 3rd edition Warhammer, it's not that it fills me with dread, I just know the attention span it requires is very heightened, whereas it's much easier to go, there you go, John. In fact, I'd helped him out trying to do a samurai elf list in the middle of last year, and he'd 3D printed a load of stuff and worked it all out, and it was like, okay, grand. When he came to do his undead, he'd ordered the stuff and then worked out a 2,000 point list himself. I went, yep, no, great, I've done it, here's my list. I'm looking at it going, that's not bad. You know, there's no artifacts in there. But he said himself he wants to learn how the game plays without worrying about additional rules, and then he can go in and see what he needs to tweak, whether it's changing regiments to hordes or dropping hordes into 2 regiments or blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he was able to go, okay, here's how I've been told list building works once, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and now I can sit down with the companion and go, here's the undead stuff I have, what can I build? I can build this, go. And just put together a 2,000 point list that's viable. Just shows that it's, the old world is old.
I mean, the only reason why you might want to play it is really just nostalgia, or if you're dead stuck on the lore of the old world, right? But I feel like it's a diminishing crowd in a way. And again, I'm not trying to say these people are wrong. Like, it's great for them if they want to do this.
Oh, and, I will. They're wrong.
You're an extremist, and more than I am. That's not usual. Usually, I'm the one being the extremist. But anyway, I just very clearly as a game, it fits me a lot better to just play Kings of War. So, and if I have to, bring someone new into the hobby, it's kind of a similar thing, right? Like, just you look at the rule books, it's quite a story, right? Like the old world rule book, it's well written for a GW rule book. It's really nice. I bought it. I was curious. I wanted to read it and see how it goes and so on. But it's a very, very thick book, and it's definitely not read it once and play a couple of games and then you're good to go. That is not how this game works. To bring new players is probably not where you want to take them in. With all other things, yeah. Anyway,
I didn't even look at the new rule book for it. I've every edition of Warhammer sitting on the shelf beside me. I now looked at the old world and was like, if I want to play, I'll play one of the previous ones and not whatever ham-fisted version they've put together since then. But even at that, the last edition, if I look over there, I've got 8th edition rulebook plus all of the army books. That is about 25 centimeters worth of shelf space. And you compare that to King's of War, which is about 25 millimeters. One book, everything's in there. Even if you don't use Clash, if you want to use Clash, you go up to 3 centimeters. But, just the sheer volume of volumes you need to have to be able to run everything is excessive. And I'm much happier just to stick with Kings.
What shocks me is that it's all that extra book, all that extra information in these books you're mentioning, Gerry, and is it a better game? And for what I want from gaming, it's genuinely not a better game. I like a clean strategic game where movement is the most important thing. But anyway, guys, let's move on because we're bashing GW, and that's. Well, I suppose it's probably becoming our brand. We say we don't, but we do. Super, guys. We will be back after these short messages.
And now it's time for Pannilore. See what we've done there?
So, Pannilore. Guys, who would like to hear about the undead?
Ooh, me.
Yeah, seriously, I was wondering, who are the undeads in Pannilore? Like, what makes them Pannilore undeads?
So I'm going to read out a couple of sentences from the book. So I have read, parts skimmed, but I have cast my eyes over the lore in the green book, big green book, from page 220. So, in Pannilore, the dead do not rest easy. Across the successor kingdoms in Mantica, feudal barons look to the ancient burial grounds where kings of old lie in thrice warded barrows since before the Age of Ice. Those kings who served Oscan and the Wicked Ones, it is said, are cursed to spend eternity in a state of undeath. So, So I think we've got a few things going on there, right? So there were definitely humans who served the Wicked Ones and Oscan during the God War, I think it was called, right? So they were just bad. They were bad humans. Yes. and they have since been cursed. So we can see that obviously, with things being thrice warded, there's lots of protections to stop people gaining this information. So people, sort of kings and humans who fought evil in the God War, they've sort of been cursed with being undead, as it were. But you also have, Clem, sort of necromancers, or people who want to be necromancers, who are really all across Mantica. Now, so it's super difficult. So they don't have the dark web, right? What they have is some books that probably come from Ophidia. And they're very tightly controlled. But occasionally, sort of the rich and powerful can get their hands on this forbidden knowledge. And basically it explains that everybody in Pannilore hates the dark arts. So necromancy is the most abhorrent form of sorcery. So those who practice it are hated and feared in equal measure. So everybody absolutely hates people that want to be necromancers. It's really, really hard to get hold of this stuff to even start. And it sort of also implies that 99% of people that do try, of the small number, most of them just kind of go mad and don't ever really do anything powerful with it. They just sort of go mad. The power drives them mad. So it's really hard. And the other thing is, let's say, for example, Clem, you decide you want to be a necromancer. Well, the neighbours are going to notice immediately, because everything, so the dark magics will twist everything. So, trees will be totally gnarly, the sun won't really appear properly where you are. It's really, really obvious, that, all kind of life will die, stuff just it dies in its proximity. So if suddenly your neighbour's grass is all dead, the trees are dead, the cat's dead, making weird noises, with her weird red eyes, you're going to go, uh-oh, I ought to tell somebody, at which point a load of paladins will come round and murder your neighbour. So it's actually very, very hard and very,
bad
very
paladins.
rare.
Paladins, bad.
It's actually incredibly rare to have these people who are, successful necromancers. Now, of the few there are, they are powerful and they can attract minions with the promise of, never dying, right? So you'll have loads of cultists coming to you who want to serve you. But at that point, everyone wants to get you immediately. So you can raise an army of sort of 10,000 skeletons and undead and all the rest of it. But at that point, for the most part, depending where you are, but generally speaking, you're probably on borrowed time and there's going to be an army coming to get you pretty quick. So that's necromancy. Yes, guys, let me throw it over to you guys. Questions?
Yes, of course, tons of questions. So in an undead army, no one is actually leaving except maybe the necromancer?
That's genuinely correct. Yeah, generally correct. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Another question that I have also for the undeads is, in the current version of the list, because maybe they will change something for Force, let's see. There are vampires, like it's kind of a big theme, right? You have the skeletons, you have the werewolves, you have the vampires, the zombies, the ghouls. Is there also something special about vampirism somehow in Pannilore, or?
No, there is. If you go into page 225, or 224 rather, there is the mark of the vampire. And vampirism is a curse. So basically there were some necromancers were fleeing the good guys. Basically, they were losing the war in the God War, and they retreated to Ophidia. And you get the impression from reading this that actually, because we always think of Ophidia as being the good guys. Well, if you read this, they've got a lot of stuff to answer for. So the fleeing necromancer basically sacrificed 30 nobles in return for being kind of protected by Ophidia from the good guys. And they did this ritual that, to try and protect themselves, except the paladin found them while they were doing the ritual, and they slaughtered the kind of 13, sacrifice people, and basically this interrupted the ritual, the whatever ritual, and as you can tell, I'm kind of very vague with this, but effectively what that meant is the person in the sarcophagus was trying to become something way more powerful, but because this process was interrupted, they were stuck being this horrible vampire. So that's how vampires were created. So they were kind of stuck between being human and being something, much more powerful and darker kind of thing. And they have the curse of, needing blood and all the rest of it. And they can create other vampires, in the usual sorts of ways. And, things like chopping their heads off. And I think there's something called iron wood or something, basically a stake through the heart with this special wood does the trick. But yeah, so it was kind of an evil ritual that went wrong, and it's very much a sort of a curse. But some vampires are so powerful that they can, for example, they can use magic to create a cloud that hovers above them to prevent the sun from burning them, basically.
That's pretty cool. Well, I mean, I have a question, but maybe that's more for the topic of the month, or I don't know. So what do you think will happen or should happen to undeads in Pannilore to make them even more so Pannilore undeads, if you know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Clem. So it goes on to talk about Morgor the Faceless. Now, Morgor was a human, but we don't know how old he is. He's supposed to be really old. And he was kind of trained by the elves, but he's very much kind of a Voldemort kind of character. He was kind of trained by the good guys and then, went evil. Now, I would like to see... There's not much in here on Lady Alona, if anything. There's just a nice picture of her, the vampire. Now, to be honest, what I would like to happen is I would like a bit more story on Ophidia, although maybe that's a side topic. So what I would like to happen for 4th edition, to be honest, Clem, is I would like Morgor to be much better explained. Now, a lot of us, like I think us three, for example, making this podcast, we prefer not to play with, the named characters because we kind of like to do our own thing. But I would like Morgor to be more fleshed out, as it were. And I'd like more information on him. I'd also like more information on Lady Alona, the vampire countess or whatever she is. So I'd just like more background that ties into potentially the God War, but just basically Mantic, Mantic lore. I'd like more stuff here. So it's not just, what's there is fine, but it is. There's nothing here that is... if I were to just... Before I read this, if I were just to guess, I would be mostly right. Do you know what I mean? It's fine, fairly generic stuff. And I'd like them to just put a little twist on it a little bit. I like the idea that this vampirism is kind of a curse from a ritual that was stopped. It was not what they were intending to happen. I think that's cool. But I would like, honestly... the 4th edition 2-player set to be undead with, new Harplastics against Basilia with new Harplastics, because I think it's a shame that Basilia, because in the lore and logically, Basilia should be one of the most popular Mantic armies, right? And it's not really. And I think it really should be one of the poster armies, and I think it would be super, super cool to have, let's say, for example, the Sisterhood against the undead in the little booklet that comes with it. We're in a specific part of Pannilore. We're not just, random people on the table. And I think that would be super, super cool for 4th edition.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I really like in Warpath, what they've done with the summer campaign with Tercia. and the introduction of the Night Stalkers, because I find it's exactly the right balance of it gives you some inspiration for your own stories without being too prescriptive of, hey, this is how things happen and this is what you need to do. And so I think, yeah, they could do something similar, right? Like one more, plot moving forward for Pannilore, and suddenly we discover some, new sister, like the Sisterhood or whatever from Basilian, and like the heavy cavalry models we've already seen renders. Like where do these guys come from? And then these are, at the center of fighting against resurgence of some undeads for some reason or one reason or another. I'm not so sure what type of kits I would want, like new kits I would want for the undeads. Probably just replace some PVC stuff with hard plastics. That would be a good starting point.
Yeah, I just step on that a second, Clem. Is I think the mistake, one of the mistakes with the Trident Realm release recently is as Mark said, don't just give me stuff I already have in plastics. Like I wouldn't just do a like for like, one for one. That was in PVC, now it's in hard plastic. There you go. I would kind of rethink it a little bit. Jerry, what do you think, buddy?
I was actually thinking of going something like the halflings, because I do think the Sisterhood need hard plastics. Some people have the PVC and other people just don't bother with them because they can't be bothered dealing with that. But I was thinking if you've got a hard plastic set that is 5 cav and 10 infantry, and then lean into the fact the Sisterhood are your sort of your light troops, because we know the paladins are coming, foot and mounted from the looks of things. So something like that would be interesting. It sounds like Basileia are going to get a big release. I don't know if that will mean humans and Elohi in hard plastic, or if it will just be the Basileans for the time being, just getting the paladins out to go alongside the men-at-arms. But I do think the undead, it's still a great faction, and the miniatures still hold up well. Potentially lean into the cavalry for them, so you rev cav, even because if you're going to stick with the one kit sort of per army to try and flesh it out, it's the cavalry that suffers in Kings of War quite a lot. They've got infantry for a lot of forces, but they don't have the cavalry alongside it without going into PVC. And I think they need to get away from that. I don't know if they need to potentially add new types, because even with the PVC that currently exists, they only have one weapon type. So if you want your sisters, if they're mounted, they've got spears, and if they're on foot, they've got two-handed flails. There's no options. You have to convert all your options, I think. It's been a while since I've opened those boxes. But just doing, here's a nice plastic kit that gives you the options, like the halflings. You want to do ranged weapons, great. You want to do hand weapons, fantastic. You want to do 200 weapons, there you go. Knock yourself out. And just do it sort of that way. And then, yeah, go ham with Basileia against undead. Because like you say, Lady Iona has... Alona's got a paragraph in that book about how she's just super evil. Nothing else about her.
Yeah, and it's not, as a starting point, it's fine, but we want more. I think that's a great point, Jerry. I think it's no secret the Halflings army is by far and away the most successful army release Kings of War's ever had in terms of selling Mantic models. There are some weird quirks in it where you get the sprue with the cavalry and the infantry. I've never done the army, so I can't comment whether I think that was an issue or not. I think in a perfect world, and I appreciate this is almost certainly too expensive for Mantic to do as one release, but what I'd really like to see is, let's say, for example, a Paladin ambush box which has the new cavalry, the new infantry sprues, and that's kind of your heavy stuff. And then I'd like almost a separate ambush box with the Sisterhood stuff. And as you say, Jerry, it's the fast attack stuff. It's the glass hammer, with the the ladies riding their Gur Panthers or whatever it is, and the infantry, the kind of fanatics infantry. I think that would be super cool, because I'd love to do an army of, frankly, of kind of religious zealot ladies. I think that just sounds really, really, really fantastic and interesting. Yeah. But and undead. I mean, I think in a weird way, I think Mantic and Undead has been in a strange spot, because for the time, the Mantic stuff is great. The kits, the undead kits, and they've held up really well. But it could do with a refresh, I would say. And it's undead is a very popular army. So I would like to. I think that would be great to have that as kind of the poster children for the 4th edition.
I agree. I think the current range still holds pretty well. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of, or it's not like, oh, I definitely don't want to deal with it. I just want new ones. I mean, Mantic also has some new skulls for Dungeon & Saga Origins, for example. There's a bunch of undeads in there, and I think there are different skulls. So, they could probably extend or renew parts of the existing range, or, make it available in a new way, potentially. I'm not so sure. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and as you said, is also like a poster child, like the undeads. And there are tons of people like, oh, whatever system I play, I like undeads, right? Or immediately speaks to you. So yeah, I think there's really definitely something big to do with the poster child, human faction Basilia, and poster child also undeads. That's pretty exciting, actually. But yeah, curious to see what they do with it.
And then I think it would be really easy down the road to then lean into. You're in a much better position to lean into Ophidia if you want to. It's been promised for a really long time. I think it would be cool. I don't think if they did Ophidia, I don't think it'll be a massive, massive seller. I suspect when they do it, it'll be, well, here's our nice new plastic undead kit or Empire Dust kit with a few bits. And I kind of hope they don't do it like that. I hope they do a proper release. But I think we're gonna talk about the Trident Realm release from last year, and maybe some things I'll say assailant for that point also. But yeah. Jerry, what do you think, buddy? Anything to add?
No, I think that covers most of it. I think you're right with the Ophidia, though. Currently, it's just Jarvis. So if they do decide to expand on Ophidia, they need to make it distinct. What that is, I don't know. The easiest thing would be just to go, here's a few heroes / resin options that you can get from the vault as well. And I think that would be simple, but possibly also lazy. And I think if they're going to do Ophidia, they should really go the whole hog. Here is our totally unique take on good undead. This isn't just a skeleton army with a different hero. It needs to be distinctly different from everything that's come before it. Which makes it an interesting proposition, possibly also one that I don't know if they'll do it anytime soon, at least not to that extent.
Jerry, I think you're exactly right. I think the last thing Kings of War needs is more armies to bulk out the roster, because already the roster is pretty full. So if you're going to add a new army, I think it has to be for very good reasons, and you have a clear vision of what this is, and it has to be unique. It can't just be, well, we've got loads of Forces of Nature kits, and we've got overlap, so we can eke out a new faction here, or just, as you say, just add Jarvis and a couple of heroes, and boom, there you go. There's your new faction. I can't see how that is going to sell well, or be particularly adding to the game or the richness of the universe or anything like that. So, yes, if they're going to add a new faction, I think it'd be lovely if they were to do it properly. Cool, right.
This is Ronnie Renton, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
Cool, guys. So we're back to our question of the month, guys, because as per last month, we didn't ask the questions quickly enough. So Steve Evans, lovely, lovely man from Bristol, and he paints a lot of armies. So he's asked us a question. Your thoughts on the Abyssal Nagari update? Just doesn't make sense to me. The model doesn't look like a Master of Combat Melee 3+, more of a Combat Brute, Crushing Strength 2. So has the update just been made so that competitive players might use them? Yes, Clem, you're as our resident Forces of the Abyss player. What do you think?
I mean, the expert Force of the Abyss who's a bit lost with this list building at the moment. Obviously, I'll take it, the 3+, for the same cost, right? That changes their usefulness. I agree totally with you, Steve. Like, Crushing Strength 2 would have made more sense in a way. But I think they had a problem, maybe still do, in that most Forces of the Abyss armies will want one unit of snakes. And then I can predict a bunch of players will end up with a bunch of those sprues and not really know what to do with them. And I'm not sure if the Melee 3 solves the problem. What I really would want to see with them is remove the aura and put this aura just on a hero or something, and just get the snakes a heavy cavalry profile of some sort. So in the very short term, that's a reasonable fix without too much impact either. They only have 12 attacks, right? So who really cares? But yeah, I think I agree with you. They could rework this unit a bit further for the next clash. I don't think at this point it would just be a small errata to change this. But yeah, give me a reason where I actually want to have 2 or possibly 3 regiments of these. That could be interesting. Or, just have them as individual monsters, like a chariot individual based model as a hero or as a monster option. That could also be pretty cool. So, yeah.
I think the conversation may be slightly more complicated because you can have super competitive players or you can have hobbyists, whatever. From my perspective, so I loved all of the Forces of the Abyss models, particularly the Lord of Lies. I thought it was just great, and I do like these models very much. From my perspective, before they showed all this, it was really clear to me what the Forces of the Abyss needed, and that was new cavalry models and hard plastic Molochs. So I was really surprised to see, I was interested, but surprised to see they'd gone with these 2 other units. And it's not that I don't like them, I do, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Clem, I think you're exactly right. What I would do is ditch the Abyssal Horsemen and make these things kind of the horrible, monstrous cavalry unit. So it becomes the hard-hitty thing. But I think Steve's right. The models, they don't look like a Master of Combat. They look like a horrible, lumbering, powerful Crush 2 brute. So I do agree with Steve. And of course, to me, it's pretty clear that what Mantic should be doing with their hard plastics is giving us hard plastics for things we want lots of, right? Whether it's, infantry, cavalry, whatever, but things we'll need a lot of in our army. And I think for the way this unit is, where you might need 3 for the whole army, or maybe in a pinch 6, but unlikely more, you don't necessarily want that in hard plastic. You either want that in the vault or you want to buy Mantic resin for these low model count units. So putting them in the ambush box when you only probably want 3 in your army, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So changing this unit so it fits the model more and ditching the cavalry, I think, is the way to go. Clem?
Yeah, I agree. I think you have a good point. When you think of it, the Force of the Abyss, they have, 5 cavalry profiles now? They have the horsemen, they have the dogs, so the hellhounds, it's light cavalry. Arguably, they have the tortured souls, so they're technically speaking infantry, but the profile is more cavalry-like. They have the new berserkers, they have the Morlocks. I mean, they're speed 6, so is it really cavalry? It's kind of debatable, but you could argue it's a similar role. So, maybe there's something to do. It kind of gets the hair on my back to raise when you say ditch the horsemen. because I have 2 or 3 regiments of them. But ultimately, maybe you're right, and maybe have the Berserker be the fast cavalry in a way, and the snakes be like the slower but heavy cavalry. That could be a nice combo in a way, and then you have fast and slow cavalry in the same ambush box. But I'm not sure. Let's see a bit how the army does with a year of playing, and maybe if there are some profile changes, or it's not like they've never done it, right? Like kind of change the typing of units.
No, but I don't see a reason why it couldn't happen. I mean, ultimately, with these releases, what I really want to see is things being cleaned up. And to me, after this release, this just seems very messy. And that to me, that just doesn't... That's not what I want to see. Jerry, what do you think, buddy?
I don't mind the 3+, mostly because if anybody's ever seen a snake moving, very, very rarely do I look at a snake and go, oh my God, it's a lumbering monster. I go, holy shit, how quickly did that move?
They're very agile as well. Yeah.
They are whip fast, so I don't mind the low crush and high melee for the, if you want to think of it like their speed. The fact they are a chariot unit, not cavalry, is massive, because phalanx don't care about phalanx. Cavalry can suck phalanx all the day of the week, but chariots will just ram into that, which is something we tend to see a bit more of. Certain armies lean more into phalanx units than others, so being able to put a big blocking unit down and hammer in is hard. Also, the fact that they have the regen aura means they make a very substantial second line attack unit, because they're buffing the regen for whoever's in front of them. And then when that unit finally goes away, they're coming in. They don't have a ton of attacks like some of the other cavalry units would have, because they're only rocking the 12, but they've got a solid 3+. Crush one's all right. It can always be buffed by Bane Chant or whatever. But by the time they hit the front line, whatever they're hitting should have been weakened enough. So I think they're an interesting unit to have as a second wave or second line support, because they're a bit different. The fact they have that regen aura, I think they're definitely one to experiment. I don't have a huge amount of Abyssal Horsemen, which might be why I'm not particularly worried. I look at the Berserkers and Molochs, and then go, okay, well, Molochs are great, but they're slow. Abyssal Berserkers, chuck those forward, chaff somebody up, put some damage on them, and then, Molochs come in, or your Nagari come in, and then polish them off later on. Having plastic Abyssal Horsemen would be fantastic. I wouldn't say no, but they're very different. I mean, stat-wise, if I could have one plastic, I would have went for the Abyssal Horseman, but maybe they decided, because people get, and we've already mentioned about getting something different in for the undead, something that we have, or for the Basileans, a unit that we haven't already seen. This is a prime example of a unit we hadn't already seen. We're not replacing a PVC regiment with a hard plastic, so people who already have Abyssal Horsemen aren't having to worry about replacing those units. And people are going, well, we didn't want that. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. And it's yes, and I have actually played against the army once since this unit was released, and my opponent very much played a Nagari as you're describing, as second line support, as a support with the auras and everything, and when they fought, they died pretty quick against my amazing Trident Realm army on the way to a crushing victory, a crushing, very, very tight, I thought I'd lost victory. Yeah. Fantastic. Great stuff, guys. Cool. I think possibly we can move on, guys. Should we talk about our topic of the month?
Sure.
Let's go for it.
I'm Brandon Rossbond of Winged Hussar Publishing. So much universe, so little time.
Guys, so our topic of the month is we're going for the very safe what were the things that really stuck out? And maybe we just go through things quite quickly, but what were the things that we really enjoyed last year? What were the things that stuck out to us? And what are the things we're really looking forward to in 2025? Gerry, why don't you kick us off?
Okie dokie. So for 2024, I really like the focus on the sci-fi side of things, bringing Night Stalkers into the Warpath universe. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but the Warpath epic game as well seems like it's going to be interesting. It gives a nice boost to the sci-fi side and lets people think that, or know that it's not been forgotten in favor of just being the red-headed stepchild to Kings of War. They did an awful lot of great work with the factions, and the campaign was a lot of fun as well, especially even the prelude to it, getting involved and following the White Rabbit, so to speak, and trying to work out what was going on in that Mason Lab website and trying to break through that. So I think the sci-fi getting a bit of a boost was a real outstanding moment in 2024, and hopefully it will continue into 2025. But I have to say, for 2025, it's Basileia. I've been looking forward to seeing some paladins for some time now, and not just the two-handed weapon PvC ones we have. I have a paladin Basilean list that has 5 regiments, which is absolutely terrible, but I adore it so much. And the idea that I'll actually be able to have plastic Mantic figures for it, rather than just running my old lead figures from Rackham, is great. So I can't wait to see what they do. I think Ronnie said it's so soon as a little tease, and it's going to be a big one. So I'm very keen to see where that goes.
Yeah, I wouldn't think I would be saying this, but I could see myself doing a Basilian army, depending if it, if I'm really impressed, I could see my next army being a Basilian army, which is not something I thought I'd say. Clem?
No, I just wanted to say I agreed. For me, 24, one of the most exciting part was the sci-fi aspect, because I think the Tertia campaign was really a hit. It was quite impressive and fun also, the way they introduced, the Night Stalker incursion, like was it Pluto 2 or 3, whatever experiment, like the failed experiment from Mason Labs, and the fake website and everything. That was a very fun backdrop for stories, and obviously we've also played a lot on Tertia and with that universe, and so for me that was a very solid campaign, very inspiring campaign, and definitely exactly what I expect, or what I would want from this type of things. And so I hope they keep that type of things going for sci-fi, but also I hope to see some of that level of excitement and really project your games onto a different background also for fantasy. Because I liked the campaigns that we've had, like the Halpi's Rift campaign. There were fun things. I liked the book and the special rules with it. Like I had a few fun games with it, but not to the level of immersion that I had with Tertia. And I'm sure we can do it also in Pannilore. And so I really hope something like that will happen for 25. I'm not sure how, but obviously they have 4th edition coming up. And so that sounds like the right time to also move the plot forward, or have like a big, backdrop, massive starter release. Here's what's going up, and Clash of Basileia and Undead, or whatever it is. I think that has a lot of potential. Might not happen in 25. Might be that 4th edition is early 26. They take a bit more time working on it, but still, like the medium long term for Kings of War, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And yeah, Basileia as an army. Never say never, but there are good guys, and it's not exactly my thing, as you guys know. So I'm not holding my breath for it. I'm very curious to see what models they come up with, but will I make an army for it? Probably a small ambush force, but not 2,300 points. So yeah, otherwise, 24 for me was the year of the goblins, and I like that. Not going to Clash last year kind of allowed me mentally, at least, to say, you know what, I'm allowed to do a Kings of War army that isn't 100% Mantic. If I want to have something slightly different, and I had tons of squigs, like all of the Mobists and the Giants are squigs, which is totally not Pannilore like. I had a good time with them. I went to one-day events with this army, and that's also an enjoyable experience. So I think I want to do also some of that in 25. But yeah, what about you, Chris?
Yeah, you're right, Clem. I think Tertia is, to me, that is just sort of, that sets the standard of what I want to see for kind of narrative gaming. I want Mantic just to give us an idea of this is a place, this is where we're fighting, and get on with it, guys. And it was it was a great amount of story to give us, while at the same time obviously letting us do our own things. And for me, that's absolutely ideal. So yes, whether it's Pannilore or the Warpath universe, please just give us more of that. I think as a gaming group, Clem, we find it easier to come up with stories in the Warpath universe. And that's probably because at the end of every gaming weekend we can just say, and the planet we're on blows up, or the ship blows up. And that's very easy to do. Whereas obviously with Pannilore, we can't blow up Pannilore unless we get into weird alternative realities or something like that, which is something I do not care for in storytelling, because I think the moment you do that... Do you guys remember the Marvel films where they killed off half of the good guys and then they just sort of did time travel to undo that? And as far as I'm concerned, the moment you use time travel to undo stuff that's happened in the plot, you you take all the stakes off the table of nothing. None of this matters anymore anyway, because there's alternative timelines. Or anyway, I'm getting into a bit of a rant that isn't warranted. But anyway, so yes, very much like Tertia. If I'm being completely honest, I was very excited about the Trident Realm. I love the Trident Realm. The Trident Realm is my jam. I will play them anyway. So Mark and Wiki Dave talked about this on their Lore end of year review pod, which came out recently, and I think they absolutely nailed it. There was the one thing I liked about the Trident Realm release was the lore was great. All the stuff about the old gods and the Lovecraftian stuff. Oh yes, please. That's as a Trident Realm player, I definitely want to hear that. Now, I've kind of word on the street is that Mantic are disappointed with the sales of the Trident Realm release recently, and to me, I think the demand is there, and I think the Trident Realm could genuinely be one of Mantic's biggest IPs. I think it's relatively unique. I know, sure, since Games Workshop have now a fantasy underwater elf army, but I think that's quite a specific thing, and I still think Mantic have a lot of room to manoeuvre here, and I think the hobby opportunities for the army are incredible. So I think I genuinely think demand is there, but the way that Mantic handled the release, just as Mark and Wiki Dave said, just wasn't right. I think that decisions that were made were not the right ones, and then even making the wrong decision, I think implementation was pretty poor. So, as Mark said, it sounded cool giving us frogs, but I have metal frogs. Mark has metal frogs. We're not that interested. The sculpts are the same sculpts. They're not. I mean, if you think of, if someone says there's frogs riding on frogs, you go, wow, that sounds cool. And the poses are they not massively dynamic, if I'm completely honest? I mean, they are, we had this, right? We talked about it before. It's good to get things in hard plastic, but it's you're going to drain a certain amount of excitement or demand by just giving kits we already had. Okay, yes, it was frustrating. The resin or the metal, it was not great, but we already had them. Obviously the Lord of Lies model, if we compare this to the Abyss, that was a real wow. That's a centerpiece model people will buy the army based on that. I mean, when I go to Clash next year, I'm probably going to pick up a Lord of the Lies with no interest in doing an Abyss army, really. I just want to own and paint that model. It's so gorgeous. And likely then I'd probably pick up an ambush box or two and just do something with it. So I think you really can, with these incredible Halo models, you can really draw people in, to the army. And if I'm being completely honest, it's, people have talked about it, but the Trident King was the big push with the rules. We had the introduction of the 3 Trident Kings, and we don't have a model. And it seemed so obvious rules-wise that Mantic were trying to push us, or the rules committee were pushing us in that direction, and yet we don't have a model. And we have, a Coral Giant. I'm not a big fan of Mark knows better than I do. He says it doesn't fit the lore that we have. I haven't seen the model in person, but just looking at the photos, I'm just not excited about that, if I'm being completely honest. So, and then the rest of the kind of releases, the Nuka model was from the board game. We already had that. It's a lovely model. When you paint it up, it looks great. I've got 3 of them. The Depth Horror Eternal is an okay PVC model. It's fine. But it's not terribly exciting. So suddenly you look at it, and the best things are probably the things we already had, to be quite honest. I love the Naiads. But that's not a new kit. So yeah, sorry to have a moan, but I just feel like this was just. I was so excited about the Trident Realm. I mean, this just wasn't how I wanted it to go.
I agree. I think there was a bit of a missed opportunity, but I'm not so sure the main factor here is, the frogs, we already had the metal frogs. I think there's something else going on there because, I don't know. For example, if you look at the Force of the Abyss, I'm sure if they had released the Abyssal Horsemen as plastic kits, those would have sold quite well. So I think the issue with the Trident Realm was also, it was a bit unclear exactly what was going on with the army, like what really is the identity. Like they only release frogs and frogs. It's only a tiny subset of what the Trident Realm really is. And it, in a way, doesn't really help you when you want to do a Trident Realm army. Like, how many frogs do you have in your list, Chris? Or that's kind of a limitation, I think.
One of the challenges with the army, and one of the big challenges Mantic have, is you have probably about 4 or 5 different directions you can put the army in, because there's so many different troop and large infantry choices. There's loads of them, right? I think if the frog stuff, if it was new dynamic poses, I think it would have been interesting and compelling. But lots of people like depth horrors. We don't have depth horror models. We just have the depth horror eternal. I mean, I think the Butcher models for Night Stalkers, I think they fit perfectly for what Depth Horror Eternals, or Depth Horror should be. What I would have done, I think, is push they put the Thul and the Tidal Swarms in the vault. I would have also put all the frog stuff in the vault as well. And I would have definitely, as Mark said, I would have just given us hard plastic placoderms. And just, dear listener, if you're listening to this, Trident Realm is an awesome army. I really do recommend you do it, despite all my complaining. The box to get is not the Trident Realm ambush box. The box to get is the Force of Nature one, and the salamanders you have make for great proxies for the placoderms. But it just kind of sucks, Clem, because I did a Trident Realm army with the Trident Realm release. And there's me using proxies for my Trident King, and since I did my Tidal Swarms, there are, it's easier to get Tidal Swarms, but I use Mantic proxies for everything.
I mean, that could have been a solution as well, right? Like you said, the Butcher is a good base for depth, or then just release some bits on the vaults that change the head.
That's it. That's it.
Or the head, and suddenly, boom, you have a depth thrower. Exactly. Or do the same for like the placoderms. Well, they look very similar to salamanders because it's a salamander sprue.
Yeah.
Change the head or change whatever, like a few resin bits, and you use the same plastic sprue, and then there are placoderms, right? So I think that there could be things they could do, and they could still do it now, right? Like it's not like, that was a messed option. It's not too late. Yeah. And suddenly, maybe people will start doing more Trident Realm armies, because locally, I haven't seen many frog armies at all, right?
You don't see them. But, having said all that, I love the Trident Realm. And, yes, I know, we do know Mantic do listen to the show. Some people Mantic listen to the show. people love the Trident realm. There is demand there, but it's just it wasn't quite right. I think the release wasn't quite right, but I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it going forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Basilian release brings. And Gerry, do you have anything to add to that conversation? Do you think I'm being unfair at all?
No, we all wanted placoderms, 100%.
Yeah, Mark said exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Ever since Ector came out as a resin, it was like, holy shit, that's amazing. I want a unit of those. And that's all I want in life. And the sooner people give it to me, the less likely that anybody has to get hurt.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's exactly the same thing with the Trident King. It's like, why don't we have a super cool model for this? It's so cool, such an interesting unit. I mean, I was playing the Trident King back when he really sucked, But I love the idea of it and him charging in, and But there we go. But okay, super. And then other things I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to obviously tiny little sci-fi men. But this year, to be honest, I'm looking forward to enjoying the toys that I have in new ways, and just, let's say, for example, Gerry, I'm looking forward to playing more Walking Dead. I'm looking forward to playing more Firefight. I'm just looking forward to playing with my toys. And I don't know. I will do another Firefight army soon of the massive boxes of stuff I've got in the basement, right? And it's just, which one would I like to do? Would I like to do Night Stalkers? Because I was thinking about using my, as I said, my Night Stalkers bits as my Trident Realm army. Because I think there's lots of models that would make nice, there's models that would make nice proxies for Thull, even. I think the Reapers, for example, I think would look cool as Thull. It kind of makes sense, but maybe they're required for Firefight on little round bases. I think maybe they are. So I'm just looking to enjoy what I have and spend time with my friends and laugh at each other's misfortune.
But Chris, I have a critical question for you. Obviously, in 24, you've spent a lot of energy building your local Kings of War group, and quite successfully, I would say. Like, you didn't even mention it, but a year ago, you were in a totally different position, right, in that regard. So I think the question is, do you plan to now also introduce sci-fi in your local group, or play more sci-fi locally, or are you still focusing on Kings of War to build the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, Clem. I think a bit of balance between the two. I mean, obviously, we're going to have our event. I've already asked 3 local friends who play Kings of War with me, and they are my friends now, rather than Kings of War friends, if that makes sense. They're genuine friends. Just message them all independently and say, do you fancy a game of Firefight? Do you want to try it out? 2 of them already have models that they've bought and they haven't tried it yet. And the other one was Andrew, and he said, yeah, go give it a go. And he's already kind of said he expects to get into Firefight at some point. It's just probably a question of when, because he's still very much enjoying doing his Night Stalkers for Kings of War. So, but I have obviously told him, well, the Night Stalkers are also in Firefight now. So, so I think it's just going to be a question of getting the balance right, Clem, of not, enjoying both games, as it were.
I mean, it's always the question, right? Like, there's more games than what we can play, and so you have to kind of be on a selective process and pick what you want to play.
It's opportunity cost, isn't it? If we're playing one thing, it means we can't play 5, 6 other things we'd love to play. And I had an absolutely amazing 2 versus 2 game of Antares recently. 2 new people tried it, loved it. So yes, and so I also need to make sure I also make time for Antares, because I absolutely adore Antares as a game. I really do. So it's always a good time.
I think the good point is, you can go a few months without playing Firefight or playing Kings of War and then get back to it, and you will probably get back into it almost right away. And even if you bring someone entirely new to the system, it's not like they need, months to get to understand the thick rulebook, because the rulebook isn't that hard to go through. No. Like the core mechanics of the rules are, approachable enough that you can probably switch a little bit from one gaming week to the next play one game or the other, and it just doesn't, saturate your brain with too much information you can't handle. So yeah, I guess you will have to experiment a bit with it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, Clem, exactly. I mean, I'm just picking names out of a hat here a little bit, but if you play, let's say, for example, Malifaux or 40k maybe, if you go, let's say, for example, you go 3 months without touching those games, it may be literally, right, you're starting from day one, in terms of relearning the rules and things and the FAQs, and maybe things move on so quickly, there's a... it's obviously with Mantic Games, it's not like that. Super, guys. Gerry, anything else to add, buddy?
No, I think that covers a lot of it. Yes. I'm going to say yes.
That's the spirit. Clem, what about you, buddy? Anything to add before we wrap up the show?
Well, I'm just, I hope I find a good angle for my Force of the Abyss and, make this army and then take it to events. So I'm, keeping an eye open on events that are a bit closer to me and a bit easier from a logistical perspective. And, I think 25... I definitely want to try to do this, go play in different places, new places, and, meet new people and play the games we love with new people, because ultimately that's one big part of the hobby that we all enjoy. And so I want definitely to make some space for that. And that's about it.
Fantastic. Well, dear listener, thank you for listening to the end of the show. And obviously, the listeners who listen to the end are, we love you far more than anyone else. These people that just listen for a couple of hours, Clem, we're not interested. You're the true fans, dear listener. And yes, if you have enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. Please give us a 5-star review where you listen to this. Because of the almighty algorithm, we don't understand it, but people tell us it's important. And yes, if you have a couple of bucks to spare every month, we would greatly appreciate it on our MUP Patreon. Guys, thank you so much. As always, I've had a lovely time. And yes, dear listener, so much universe, so little time.